Hey listeners, welcome to 10x Growth Strategies podcast. This is your host Preeti Padmanabhan, technology executive, investor, and board member. Today we will feature the book Love and Whiskey by Fawn Weaver. This is our first episode recorded in front of a live audience as a panel discussion. We thank our sponsors Vahe Capital, Northwestern Mutual, and Jolly VC, and our host A.N.O. Sherman. Enjoy the episode.
So you may all be wondering, why have we called this event Untapped Investing with Love and Whiskey? That's very unique. Maybe no other event might have had such a branding. So I want to uncover the secret behind that now. So let me start by talking about Love and Whiskey, a book by Fawn Weaver. It's a memoir that blends personal storytelling with insights in love, entrepreneurship, and legacy building. Weaver, co-founder of Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey, shares her journey of discovering the untold story of Nathan Nearest Green, the man who taught Jack Daniel how to distill whiskey. The book explores themes of family, resilience, and the power of exponential growth, both in business and legacy. Weaver emphasizes that love, when nurtured, can grow exponentially, influencing generations. This growth is seen not only in financial success, but also in persevering history, values, and creating lasting generational wealth through principles and purpose. You'll find that this conversation is going to be about principles, purpose, values. And it's my pleasure to welcome our panelists. I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone, and it's great to be here representing Untapped Investing. My name is Felicia Mayo, and you'll hear more about Untapped Investing shortly. Mika Mayo, co-founder of Untapped Investing, years and years as a tech operator, but pivoted the three of us into venture. Attica?
Thank you, Attica Jinks, and I am a former CMO at a tech company. And when I left that job, I was able to spend the time co-founding Untapped Investing. So this is absolutely a labor of love and purpose and intent. Thank you.
Welcome. Mika, let's start with you. Can you tell us the significance of Untapped Investing and Love and Whiskey?
Yeah, so first I want to maybe give a little bit of a story behind how Untapped Investing, Love and Whiskey, how did that even come into our brain to be the theme for today? So we pivoted and created our own private angel syndicate just this year. And we decided, since our thesis was focused on Black, brown, women, underrepresented founders, the seed, early stage, that it made perfect sense for us to launch aligned with Juneteenth. That same day, this book by Fawn Weaver, the first Black woman that built a company, leads that company, built it from the ground up to become a unicorn. Okay, so this book, Love and Whiskey, dropped on Juneteenth. I love my co-founders, and so as a surprise to them, I pre-ordered a copy of this book signed by Fawn Weaver and had it delivered, a copy to each of us on that day. So when we returned home from our launch event, we all had a copy of the book. So was born today's event, Untapped Investing with Love and Whiskey. As we then really dug into the book immediately thereafter, there's so many parallels between Uncle Nearest, Nathan Green, as well as Fawn Weaver and Untapped Investing. I'll recount two. So the first is about truth. Fawn Weaver saw this picture that you see on the cover of the book while she was on, I think, a business trip with her husband, Keith, in Singapore in 2015, 2016. This picture, circa 1904. And the full picture is all white men. And in the center, the very center of this picture is a Black man. And so it was an article about the legacy of Jack Daniels, but she knew from looking at that picture that there was something special about the man in the middle. And so she decided to make that her purpose and passion and to find out the truth, and then was able to debunk what had become kind of urban myth, that this was yet another story where innovation from a Black entrepreneur was stolen. No, they had a loving relationship, a friendly relationship. And he actually, Nathan Green, actually helped Jack Daniels. He was his first master distiller. So that truth is very similar to us. Why did we found Untapped Investing? We came about a truth, a hidden truth for us as well, that less than 2% of VC dollars go to women founders in the US, and 0.48% of VC dollars go to Black founders in the US. And that too became our purpose and passion and mission, to unearth or untap exponential growth from the underrepresented. The second parallel that I'll talk to is about trust. The book in and of itself is a love story. How do you have love without trust? When Fawn and Keith first went to Lynchburg, Tennessee to learn more, discover who is this man in this photo, they went to the library to do some investigation. And there was a woman who walked in, a white woman, who was speaking to the librarian, and they had a little bit of a whisper. And so she heard that here's two Black folks going to do, again, some kind of blog or story, some clickbait story, and she got really mad. So she marched over to Fawn and Keith and, was a bit aggressive. But Fawn immediately told her, I'm not trying to disparage Jack Daniels' legacy. I think there's something special here, and I want to tell the truth. From that point on, Judy said, I'm going to help you. And before leaving that library, she whispered to Fawn, you know that farm that Nathan Green and Jack Daniel first were making whiskey, that farm is for sale. And so it was the very next day that Fawn and Keith went to visit the Call farm, and that's where the Uncle Nearest distillery is today. So trust also underlines us. We reached out to an amazing founder when we were first getting started, who had a pretty negative experiencing bias through the diligence process with various investors. So much so, she said, I want to withdraw. But I knew that that was a really great idea, and I could see the resilience in her. We reached back out to her before we even came up with Untapped. And we formed a relationship. And she became the very first company, energy tech company, that we ultimately brought to our syndicate, and we were able to raise over $100,000 for her. And we kind of were given this idea to even start Untapped because she invited us to speak in Martha's Vineyard. And so that's what we did. We backed up from that date of when we were going to speak, because we didn't want to go there and say what we're going to do. We wanted to go there and say, what have we done? And so in both ways, in Fawn, in Untapped, it was, somebody else who we established trust with that put the idea. And then we did something. We went for it. We made it happen.
Wonderful. What an inspiring story. I think that deserves a round of applause. How they brought it all together. And the fact that we have Uncle Nearest's team here with us today, it's very inspiring. It looks like purpose, trust, love for what you're doing, and exponential growth is going to be the theme of our event here today. So let's go to Felicia. Can you tell us in what ways can love, purpose drive exponential growth in business or investment strategy and beyond just profit margins?
Yeah, so of course. So again, Mika is the storyteller. Okay, so let's just start there. But all of us have a little bit of storytelling and not be as animated. But definitely, as you hear Mika talk about love and whiskey and the parallel to us to untapped investing, some of the core tenets, of course, we want exponential growth. That's why we're here. That's what we do. But at the same time, as you heard Mika really storytell, it's not really about that. It's so much bigger. It is so much larger. And I found that parallel in London whiskey, where you really think about the consumers and when you're serving, you think about your employees, and ultimately you think about the culture that you want to cultivate within your companies. And as you're doing that, that is how you're getting to exponential growth. But you have to think about how you're going to land that. And ultimately, landing that culture and how Fawn actually did it was through truth. It was through gaining the relationships there. Now, the part that Mika did not highlight was she was from California. So she's coming in, this California person, talking about, hey, I want to do some research on Jack Daniel and asking about Uncle Nearest. Like, she had to gain the relationships there. So it's very important to gain the relationships, the trust. And then once you look at that, she brought in the community. That community was very important to ensure that she could talk to them. They understood what she was doing, that she was trying to preserve the history, and ultimately never really talked about numbers. Never talked about like, hey, I want to do this. Like, she was just going with it. Like, let me just research. And that was really what we've done really at Untapped as well. We wanted to research. I mean, we're operators by trade, of course, in different areas, but data and analytics has always been key for all of us. We allow the data to lead us to where we need to, where's the problem? And how do we assess that through data to validate what we're trying to solve? And then from there, we overlay it with the cultural piece. And we overlay it with how do we connect with our consumers, which is our angel syndicate, right? And ultimately, how do we build those relationships? And in the end, we will have some exponential growth. But if you think about it, before you kind of go to the profit margins, you actually have to think about not just 1 year, not just 2 years. What is the legacy that you want to lay the groundwork for? And as we read the book, that's what Fawn was really focused in on, is the legacy. To distill whiskey, which I now feel like I'm an expert reading this book, but to distill whiskey, it takes years. And so even Fawn highlighted much of the groundwork that she was laying for distilling the whiskey, some she won't be here for. But she recognized that was generational. She wanted to lay the groundwork for generational wealth and ultimately generational legacy for that community, for ultimately the descendants of Nearest Green. And she didn't forget about Jack Daniels as well, because it was important to make sure that she continued that love between the two and not allow that to be destroyed through trying to make money. Making money was not a thing for her. Just to give you an example, she was offered $2 billion for the company. Wow. And she looked at them and said, no, because it was so much bigger than the money. For her, it was about legacy. And ultimately, she was like, why are they offering me $2 billion? Like, what is that about? She knew that her company, it's probably valued there, but she not even looked at that. And then she came back and saw, oh, that's why you offered me $2 billion. But I'm not selling this company because it's so much bigger. And so when you think about exponential growth, it is very important to not just go into it by the numbers. And for us, it hasn't been about just making money. It's about building the community. It is about our angel syndicate. It is also about our founders, the underrepresented that Mika just highlighted the analytics for. They don't get the money. And so we are bridging that gap. We're creating generational wealth, and we look forward to doing even more.
Fantastic. What a sound way of looking at investing. And I saw that you were bringing the left brain and right brain aspects together, and we talked about exponential growth. We also know that principles and values are very critical for untapped investing. Attica, what principles or values are worth investing in to ensure that wealth becomes sustainable and grows exponentially for future generations?
Yes, it's interesting. When we first started Untapped, before it was even called Untapped, we sat in a room and we actually talked about our why. We talked about what is not so much the legacy, but what is the impact that we want to have as we move forward. And we realized it's not anymore about accumulating individual wealth. That's not enough. It has to be about the community and what are some of the ways that we can do that. So once you find your why, it becomes clear and doors just started opening. I think in our careers as executives, you're pounding down doors, especially with Black women. And for us, when we really went down deep into our why, doors started opening and the messages became clearer. One of the other things that we spent so much time also doing is talking about our values. And at Untapped, our values are around community. And we realized that we had this powerful community and the people that we had built relationships with, trusted relationships with over the years. And it was time for us to empower them. Our second value is around empowerment. And so much for us around empowerment was truly about how we're empowering our companies and our companies as well as our founders for getting the access that they needed for capital. So many of them have these incredible ideas. They're innovative. They have run other companies before. And the thing that was staying in the way was access to capital. So for us, values is truly core to what we do. And it's about driving a bigger impact than just your own legacy. It's about the legacy of the community and those connections.
Wonderful. Community empowerment, creating impact, really fantastic values there. I'd love to talk about Fawn and how she took a very disruptive approach to short-term and long-term, and she talked about it in her book. Mika, can you highlight how has Untapped Investing taken some of those learnings in terms of building short-term financial goals with long-term legacy building?
Yeah, so if you think about it, there's not very many. Well, there's no other. I guess now in the recent year or so, there's a few other now Black-owned whiskey bourbon brands. But when Fawn first started Uncle Nearest, there were none. There were very few even independent. And so she knew that she had to come at this in a different way. And the two ways that my take from my read of the book and some of her podcasts and the like was twofold. One is have the best quality, just arguably hands down one of the best tasting whiskeys. And so she's added, of course, with it being Uncle Nearest and Nearest Green, this filtration that takes longer time and costs more money. So that there's a filtration through this maple charcoal filtration. And so Orion will probably talk about that if you haven't already visited. But that's one thing that she did to disrupt. Let's take the extra effort to really make sure it's high quality. The second is a motive. This is a PR person. She knows how you get a true customer experience. You do not have churn, and you have that monthly average user continuous and growing is through some kind of immersive emote. And so she made it her mission to make that distillery a place where you can go and have a full immersive experience, tasting the whiskey, feeling the energy and the earth of where the two of them made this amazing product. And now we get to enjoy it decades later. right? So those two things really inspired us in terms of what's really lasting and what's the longevity and how do you make sure that you don't sacrifice in the near term for what you know is going to pay off in the long term. And so we've done a few things in that regard. We are, angel investors, limited partners in various funds, and we've looked at how do we curate, the best experience for our angels. And it's not always the easiest. We take them off field trips to see live demos. We have learning segments. We have inspirational speakers. So you're not just going and hearing quick pitch. We also take time really getting to know who we're going to bring forward as our founders. We have relationships. I mean, right? We could pull up our phone and have come, these are folks that are our good friends. And we've heard from all of the founders that that is a unique differentiator, that they know that we did not just write a check, but they have full access to our networks, our skills, our resources, and frankly, a listening ear and a shoulder. And so it's that same quality and a moat.
Wonderful. I've gone to know Mika, Felicia, and Attica, and they are a powerful team, right? And certainly their entrepreneurs who they've invested in are very lucky. So let's talk about resilience. Attica, tell me about what role does resilience play in both investing and building generational wealth, especially in the face of adversity. We know that is something we have to go against.
Absolutely. In Fawn's book, she talks so much about resilience. The challenges and the obstacles that she had were profound. One, which is very similar to what all of our entrepreneurs are going through, is just raising capital. What she embarked on required a lot of capital. And even though she and her husband had successful businesses, successful careers, were doing quite well, this required above and beyond what they could actually raise. So they actually went out to family and friends, and they were part of the mission with them. And she also said it was a huge responsibility because I was spending my friends' and family's money. Right. So it was really important that it was successful. And she knew, as Mika said, part of that success was about building an experience that people could relate to, be excited about, and could actually invest in even more. The other, which was a very difficult and hard truth, was that she was entering a business that was not made for her. This was a business that did not have women. To the point where she had to have her husband calling other agencies because they would not take her voice because it was a woman's voice. And that was how she was going to get distribution. So she had to do what she had to do. And at the same time, she realized that she could disrupt an industry that was not really set to meet her where she was at. And I love that. So I think about all of the things that we have to do on a daily basis. And we have all been operators and had executive careers and been able to knock down some of those doors. And one of them that we were always curious about was venture capital. And most people in venture capital don't necessarily look like us. And so we realized when we started knocking down those doors that people were actually willing to not only listen, but to help, to actually offer guidance and education. And I think there's so many similarities and honestly, quite frankly, inspiration, as a marketer, hearing Fawn's story and, the PR experience that she had. And she said, I'm a storyteller. I tell stories about love. And when she does it, it made us think, you know what? This is an inspiration. This woman can build a business that was not created for her, that she did not have experience in, and she raised money and she did it incredibly successfully. So we're inspired.
That was fantastic.
And I also love how she was unconventional in some of her practices. So I'm not going to give away everything in our book. To go read how she talked about the distribution and how she flipped that model to what has been age old. And that's just the process. And she's like, why? I'm not doing that process. And so it's lovely because diversity allows that for that innovative process, that innovative approach. And you should read the book because it's pretty amazing to see how different mindsets can create different outcomes. And of course, and for her, it was exponential growth.
Yeah, absolutely. As a marketer, that's my background. When I read all the way, Weaver was looking at the PR strategy and how she was going global or across the country with her distribution, I was blown away. Certainly consider reading the book. How would you recommend diversifying our investments, not only financially, but also in terms of human capital and cultural preservation to ensure lasting success? Tarishi, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so you've actually heard a couple of them already. So I'll just kind of highlight them. So it's preserving history, making sure that in preserving, as you are looking at whatever you are focused in on in your company or your investment companies or your VCs, making sure that for us, for Untapped, it was about preserving our history, looking at our mission, ultimately making sure that there was an experience, as you heard earlier. It's not just about the pitches. It's so much bigger than that. And it is about making sure that we are supporting back to our mission, those founders that we have now curated an experience with. We're now connected with them. We're connected at the hip. As you heard Mika state, they call us, they text us, even 9 o'clock at night sometimes where they're, can you hop on the phone now? So we even have those calls, but that's amazing because they now feel very comfortable to be with us. I think the other area too is providing that educational component. For us, it was for Untapped, ultimately making sure that the educational focus for our new angel syndicate, we have high net worth individuals, executives that may not feel so open or feel safe to ask questions because they don't know. They haven't been taught about, investing. Yes, they have done ESPP, they've done 401k, they know the stock market, but this is a whole nother ballgame, right? So how do we make sure we create a safe environment? We educate them along the way. We make sure we got all of the subject matter expertise there so that they can hear it and they can ask questions. That is very important as you look at just cultivating that type of experience. And then the third area is, and I love how Love and Whiskey, it was highlighted, Fawn, she didn't just stop at whiskey and looking at just the community. She preserved the history. She's done all those things, but she also created a leadership development program to make sure that she was not only giving back to the community, but she was upskilling. I'm an HR executive, so you're going to hear some HR words. She was upskilling the community if they wanted to be a manager. She was giving them leadership development opportunities that they need to go through, and she's going to train them. She's going to educate them on that. And don't forget about distillers. So she also partnered with a university to actually get a curriculum for distilling. And so she was giving back to the community, but also giving back to the people and ultimately giving to her employees. She was getting loyalty for that. And at the same time, she was building trust. And then from there, she was getting exponential growth. The growth was not her deal. She wanted to do all the other pieces, which was the love components. So all of those pieces actually really sink in with why she did it, how we're linking and making sure that we have all of those connectivities. And I think for us in Untapped, we've done all those things and didn't know Fawn. So as I'm reading the book, I'm like, oh my goodness, check, we did that. Oh my goodness, check, we did that. So it's been amazing to be able to see someone else's journey through their process and then to see the parallel that we actually had without even knowing her. And I'm like following her on IG. That was the limit that I had, was like following her on IG, like, what is she doing? And again, I saw some of the work that she was doing then in Portland, Oregon. And she talks about in the book where she went to Portland, Oregon, because that was one of the places with whiskey where, you would highlight your whiskey. And I think I was in one of the places that she highlighted. So it was just kind of seeing that journey
along the way, and just understanding that all of those components are very important. And those are all HRE components, but at the same time, remember, people are number one. And diversifying the way that you're getting to your growth is very important. And at the same time, those individuals are the ones that you want to create the experience and the culture where they can innovate. And all those components are required for you to be able to innovate. And so that's how you're going to win in the game. You need to have all those components. And clearly, Fawn has mastered it.
Fantastic. People, purpose, get to profits, exponential growth. Fantastic. So I'd love to hear any aha moments. Let's start with you, Attica, and we can come through.
Yeah, I think when I was reading the book, one of my aha moments, and I think this is because my background is in marketing, is the power of storytelling. And even though I had done it so much in my career and realized the importance of it, what I loved about Fawn Weaver's approach was it wasn't her story. She found a story that was meaningful and resonant and a part of history that was gone untold. And she made it her mission to tell that story. And it just blew me away because before I read the book, I thought she was part of the family. And who else would have this kind of passion and conviction and love unless you're part of that family? And she had a love of storytelling and knew the power of that. I think the one other thing I would say about that, ironically, when I was reading the story actually starts with one of the ways that she started to try to piece together the story, and that was through the family, and she was using Ancestry and using the tools that Ancestry has. And I'm currently the CMO and GM of Ancestry, and I'm like, this is amazing how the world comes full circle, because it's not just about your story, it's about using the tools you have to tell other people's stories that need to be told.
And that's Nika.
So if you think about it, the three of us didn't know anything about venture capital, right? Mm-hmm. Fawn didn't know anything about whiskey or even Tennessee. She's from California. And so to me, my aha moment was, you could do hard things. The impossible can be made possible. And so I'll just share one of my favorite quotes from Audre Lorde. And I think it is in large part because it's the three of us. Okay. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. That's what I learned.
Powerful. Thank you. Let's give her a
Yeah, I think my aha moment outside of those two, I think, it was quite, I think it really made me very vulnerable in hearing her story. Just overall, like, always question. We've always done that as operators, but questioning, like, just random things that you normally see, like a picture. And her being able to have the audacity to ask the question of, is that Black man in the middle of the picture? Like, seriously. And then she went and dug a little bit more, and she's like, let me see the original picture. And she had the audacity to step in and ask that question, and the audacity to say on her 40th birthday, I want to go to Tennessee because I need to learn more about this. I need to figure this out. And to go and talk to the family and research. Why didn't anyone else ask that question? And I think my aha moment is ask the question. It's okay to ask the question, ask the hard question, and continue to probe and ask it again if you're not getting the answers. Because she didn't stop. And that was like my aha moment. Knowing that I always knew that, but to see it in action, it's like a reminder to continue doing that, because there's only greatness that's going to come out of it.
Fantastic. Any final words of wisdom? Let's start with you, Attica.
Yeah, I think the final word of wisdom is just where we started. It's just having a love and passion for where you're spending your time and energy. I think so many of us, especially in executive positions, you're spending so much of your time and energy, which hopefully you're very passionate about, but not always. So that was my big aha. And that's one of the things that I was also so inspired with by Fawn and her book.
I'd say life is short. And so love what you do, love who you do it with. Find that mantra.
And I thought I had passion before, but not like this. Like when you're all in and you're with very good company, your friends, and your friends are business partners, and ultimately you're all have a like mission, and you have like values, and you know, exponential growth is the end result. So we're looking forward to that, and this is passion. So really enjoy the space that we're in right now, and we can only go up from here.
Wonderful. Let's go all in.